My personal belief is that slavery never went away in America. It just metamorphosized itself into what we see today, this prison industrial complex. So if you have slavery, you have the convict lease system, you have Jim Crow laws. And so it's just evolved into this thing that we see now that is like, how do we like suppress, poor people, black people, people of color, take their rights to vote, make it very difficult for them like to move up in America, but also how do we make money?
Mm,
It's all about money now.
mm.
And these companies like Securus and GTL of like they're flying around in private jets and trading on on the stock market and investing and making billions of dollars off of suffering. And what happens specifically with these phone calls, the average person makes $25-30 a month in prison, right? And usually you'll spend on hygiene products, you get your coffee, whatever, some stamps,
Conversation.
but your family carries that burden. And so usually the families don't have the resources to pay. They even charge you when your family sends you a money order. They take a cut off that. They take a cut off of everything. And then they give kickbacks to the prisons.
Yeah.
So prisoners say, well, you guys can come in and provide phone calls. And I get a $50,000 a month kickback from the company.
It's
Of
fucking
course they do
crazy.
it. And they lobby to politicians. And so now it's like, oh, we got to keep the beds filled. This is a business now. I want to stay in power. We got to keep the beds
That's right.
filled, and we making money, but it's tearing up our
Good.
communities.
Welcome to Pretty Realist Podcast. It's the Film C. That's me, Shannon Nicole. Now let's get into this video. I don't talk about music a lot on my channel, which is something I really need to change considering the fact that I spent a large portion of my life being a rapper. I have been able to really do some things when it comes to music, dropping my first album at 20. The only thing I've ever wanted to be in life, honestly, was either an artist or I wanted to have my own radio show. What I'm doing right now is definitely something that I wanted to retire from hip hop and do. I have watched hip hop go through so many transitions all the way up until I would say the late 2000s. I kind of slowed down on my indulgence of hip hop because I started noticing the change in it. It's changed so rapidly, and it's kind of sad to watch something that you've loved so much literally just fall apart. Be watching someone like your favorite auntie or your favorite uncle who has been your hero your whole entire life, and then boom, before you know it, they are hooked on drugs and they a whole sting out here in these streets. It was something that I really invested a lot of my time into perfecting when it came to my own craft. It's something that I really put a lot of energy into when it comes to me getting in this booth and spitting the best lyrics possible, putting words together, creating verses, getting out here on this stage, giving performances. It was just something that was just, it was literally like hip hop was my second language. I'm looking at it now, and it has just become a cesspool of such negative energy that it's kind of crazy for people to not really realize the change in it. Some people do, but I feel like a lot of us have accepted this. A lot of artists are really crossing over, doing a lot of big things with their career, and some have evolved while many have dissolved. Which brings me to the topic that I wanted to discuss today. As I mentioned before, hip hop, it has went through a huge shift in the type of music that is being put out to the masses. Definitely, we're watching a new wave of artists come into fold. This artist in particular, he never failed us. He always made sure that he gave his all when he got into that booth, and he goes by the name of Krayzie Bone. If you don't know who Krayzie Bone is, he is one of the founding members of the group Bone Thugs and Harmony, has been in this industry for over 20 years. I would say damn near close to 30. There was a Mount Rushmore of Midwest music. I would say that his face would be on there. Even the whole group of Bone Thugs and Harmony, just Krayzie Bone, just for the reason of he was the most consistent once the group disbanded. Everybody had their own cadence with Bone Thugs and Harmony, but they were a really good group combined, and they knew how to work their harmonies well. But Krayzie Bone was different. He hit different, and he was also one of the first artists in hip hop to bring this agenda to the table. A lot of people miss the opportunity of listening to this and being able to identify the way that hip hop has been structured today. Now, recently, he literally almost died. He has this health issue, and I'm not going to even lie. A lot of people haven't really touched on this, and I hate to be a conspiracy theorist. Just look at what has happened over the years. Anytime an artist speaks up or speaks out about some things that are going on behind the scenes when it comes to rap music, something happens to them, or they're either going to jail or they're going to prison. Krayzie Bones was no exception. Okay, he has this rare disease, same health condition that Bernie Mac died of. He fought through it, and he's in a better health state right now. But I knew that something was going to happen to him once I saw this video. And I don't think a lot of artists are going to ever talk about this because they don't want to mess up their bag. They don't want anything to happen to them either. Now, the thing with Krayzie Bone is that Krayzie Bone has been in this industry for a long time. So when I saw this video, I knew that he wasn't lying. And looking at the current condition of where hip hop is right now, I also knew that he wasn't lying. It's very, very evident that there has been a shift in this industry, and a lot of the people who are indulging in this music, they are suffering the consequences of what I'm about to show you. Now, keep in mind, this is a video. It's probably about like 10 minutes. I'm not going to stop this video. I will allow it to play all the way through, and then I'll come back and give my opinion.
The secret meeting that changed rap music and destroyed a generation. Damn. So it says, hello. After more than 20 years, I finally decided to tell the world what I witnessed in 1991, which I believe was one of the biggest turning points in popular music, and ultimately American society. I have struggled for a long time weighing the pros and cons of making my story public, as I was reluctant to implicate the individuals who were present that day. So I've simply decided to leave out the names and all the details that may risk my personal well-being and that of those who were, like me, dragged into something they weren't ready for.
Damn.
Hold on, let me
So we gonna tell a story.
We gonna tell the story. We ain't scared.
You know what I'm saying? What they gonna do?
They after us, not just playing.
Look, that black man.
So look, so he says, between the late 80s and early 90s, I was what you may call a decision maker with one of the more established companies in the music industry. I came to Europe in the early 80s and quickly established myself in the business. The industry was different back then, since technology and media weren't accessible to people like that, like they are today. The industry had more control over the public and had the means to influence them any way it wanted.
Right.
This may explain why in early 1991, I was invited to attend a closed-door meeting with a small group of business insiders to discuss rap music's new direction. Rap music's new direction.
Yeah.
Little did I know we would be asked to participate in one of the most unethical and destructive business practices ever seen.
Crazy.
So this was the meeting. The meeting was held at a private residence on the outskirts of Los Angeles. I remember about 25 to 30 people were being there.
Right.
Most of them familiar faces. Speaking of those I knew, we joked about the theme of the meeting, as many of us did not care for rap and failed to see the purpose of being invited to a private meeting to discuss the future of hip-hop.
Talk to him.
Among the attendees was a small group of unfamiliar faces who stayed to themselves and made no attempt to socialize beyond their circle. Based on their behavior and formal appearances, they didn't seem to be from our industry. Our casual chatter was interrupted when we were asked to sign the confidentiality agreement, preventing us from publicly discussing the information presented during the meeting. Needless to say, this intrigued, in some cases, disturbed many of us. The agreement was only a page long, but very clear on matters and consequences were stated that violating the terms would result in job termination immediately. We asked several people what this meeting was about and the reason for such secrecy, but could not find anyone who had the answers for us. A few people refused to sign and walked out. Nobody stopped them. I was tempted to follow, but curiosity got the best of me.
That's right.
A man who was part of the unfamiliar group collected all the agreements from us. So now it's going to get to the good part because the meeting about to start.
Talk to him, G.
It says, quickly after the meeting began, hold on one second.
Get your popcorn, y'all.
Popcorn, get your pistol. No,
For real though.
Quickly after this meeting began, one of the industry colleagues, who shall remain nameless like everybody else, thanked us for attending. He then gave the floor to a man who only introduced himself by first name and gave no other details about his personal background. I think he was the owner of the residence, but that was never confirmed. He briefly praised all of us for the success we had achieved in our industries and congratulated us for being selected as part of this small group of decision makers. At this point, I began to feel slightly uncomfortable in the strangeness of this gathering. The subject quickly changed as the speaker went on to tell us that the respective companies we represented had invested in a very profitable industry, which could become even more rewarding with our active involvement.
Damn.
He explained that the companies we worked for had invested millions into the building of privately owned prisons, and that our positions of influence in the music industry would actually impact the profitability of these investments. Then he says, I remember many of us in the group immediately looking at each other in awe and confusion. At the same time, I didn't know what a private prison was, but I wasn't the only one. Sure enough, someone asked what these prisons were and what any of this had to do with music. We were told that these prisons were built by privately owned companies who received funding from the government based on the number of inmates. The more inmates, the more the government would pay these prisons. It was also made clear to us that since these prisons are privately owned, as they become publicly traded, we'd be able to buy shares. Most of us were taken back by this. Again, a couple of people asked what this had to do with us. At this point, my industry colleague who had first opened the meeting took the floor again and answered our questions. He told us that since our employees had become silent investors in this prison business, it was now in their interest to make sure that these prisons remain filled. Our job would be to help make this happen by making music which promote criminal behavior, rap being the music of choice. He assured us that this would be a great situation for us because rap music was becoming an increasingly profitable market for our companies, and as employees, we'd also be able to buy stocks in these prisons. Immediately, silence came over the room. You could have heard a pin drop. I remember looking around to make sure I wasn't dreaming and saw half of the people with dropped jaws. My daze was interrupted when someone shouted, "Is this a fucking joke?" At this point, things became chaotic.
Right.
Two of the men who were part of the unfamiliar group grabbed the man who shouted and attempted to remove him from the house. A few of us, myself included, tried to intervene. One of them pulled out a gun, and we all backed off. They separated us from the crowd, and all four of us was escorted outside. My industry colleague, who opened up the meeting earlier, hurried out to meet us and reminded us that we had signed an agreement and would suffer the consequences of speaking out about this publicly, or even those who attended the meeting.
Damn.
I asked him, why was he involved with something so corrupt? And he replied, it's bigger than the music business and nothing we can do. It's bigger than the music business and nothing we want to challenge without risking consequences. We all protested as we walked back into the house. I remember word for word the last thing he said. It's out of my hands now. Just remember you signed an agreement. He then closed the door behind him. The men rushed us to our car and actually waited until we drove off the property.
Damn.
So this meeting, bro.
Now that's a lot for a meeting right there.
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, and this person later on, he said, you know, this person actually ended up leaving the music industry after this happened. A few years after this, he ended up leaving the music industry.
Okay.
And he said he just, like, you know, over the years he just felt guilty, because he said as he sat back and he watched these plans come to a reality
Over 2 decades.
he sat back and was like, wow, they really pulled it off.
Yeah.
They really pulled this off. He was like, they were told not to sign any more political rappers, any more rappers that had messages in their music.
No positivity.
It was all to be gangster rap music that they promoted and put out.
So if you wonder where
And this
Brand
was
Nubians
before
went,
us.
if you wonder where Brand Nubians went, where Poor Righteous Teachers went, where Public Enemy went, where KRS-One went, and all sorts of groups like that was talking,
Yeah.
even Queen Latifah and Moni Love and those, you know
Everybody.
what I'm saying? It's a back door.
Yeah, anything that was harmless, fun rap, you know, anything that had a message in it had to go.
Yeah, that's
You know
why
what
if
I'm
you
saying?
even notice though, now
And we talk about that all the time.
even be brief with it, you know what I'm saying? Those charms that came out like maybe in 1988, 89, the African
Mm-hmm.
charms, those they lasted for about 2 years and they disappeared real quick. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely,
Quickly.
definitely. Now, after reading all this, you know, it actually made me feel a few different ways. The first emotion I felt was shocked, because I was definitely taken back by this, just knowing the level of evil that's involved by even thinking of a plan like this. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? The second emotion I felt was anger. Anger because it's not enough for them to exploit our culture and make all the money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's keep it real, the industry has never been favorable towards the artists. Never. But they're going to go beyond the artists to get the artists to influence and lure in the consumer, which they knew at the time were mainly minorities.
Yep.
In other words, keep promoting gangster rap so that the youngsters will be influenced by them, which in turn will incite them to want to act like them, and it's a very good chance they'll end up in their prison.
Yeah.
So they're getting paid twice. They're getting paid from the artists they signing, and then they're getting paid from the people that these artists influence that goes to prison trying to be like these artists.
Yeah.
So they making a killing.
A killing.
They're using the music business to promote their private prison business.
So you seen the video, and y'all not gonna sit here and tell me that hip hop has not become the thought of every music genre ever created. Don't get me wrong, everything always gonna change. You know what I'm saying? It has to evolve in order for it to survive. But we're watching hip hop dissolve right in front of our eyes. I'm talking about from the way that these artists are being pimped out, music that they're creating, it's like they don't even put any time or any effort into creating good music anymore. They're selling us this image that has completely just tarnished the reputation. And I'm talking about the fact that the female rappers nowadays are overly sexual. They don't even have any type of artist development for these artists nowadays. I read a report that a lot of hip hop artists are not even able to fill up arenas anymore. A lot of artists nowadays are also selling their catalogs. I read an article that's saying that most of these labels aren't even signing rappers anymore. So now as long as you have a gimmick, or as long as you're some type of caricature and you're putting out this image on the internet, these labels see that you are a commodity or you're something that they can make money off of, overly push you to the point to where they want you to sell these toxic negative images to the people to listen to, because what's going to happen is they're going to take on these same images and they're going to take on these same ideas if they're not mentally strong, if they're easily led, if they're sheep, which we see is happening right now. They're going to take on these ideas and this energy, and they're going to go out here into the world and put that same energy out. This is a meeting that I had never heard of, y'all. Never. Until I seen this podcast and Krayzie Bones talking about this. And I think this podcast is probably like maybe 10 years old. I've never heard anybody talk about this. I've never heard about no secret meeting that was supposed to sell the image of hip hop so people could go to jail and get locked up and just ruin their lives. So this was a major shock to me. When I did see this video, I knew that something was going to happen to that man. If you look at where we are right now in our current reality when it comes to hip hop, you see how it has allowed women to just openly and willingly degrade themselves. When we see that men have become so violent and that they have no problem with killing each other. They have no problem with being drug addicts. They have no problem with going to prison and just ruining their lives and ruining their careers, ruining this opportunity to get out of the hood when they would rather just stay there. We see that there has been a shift.
For profit. We shouldn't have prisons, but why don't they make them actual correctional facilities? Like when they go there, they can get learn some type of trade. They can get proper mental health services. You know, they can get actual tools.
System. Because it's a profit system. Mm-hmm. That's the reality, right? Like when you say mass incarceration and slavery, people think that you're just trying to make a moral appeal or you're trying to condemn something. But no, in actuality, if slavery is a system by which we deprive people of their freedom and their personal liberty and we force them to work for another's gain, right? We have over 2 million people that are incarcerated in America. 400,000 of those people are being held pre-trial. Those people in private and public prisons produce over $11.6 billion in goods for the country. Their families and fines and fees associated with the convictions and costs are in over $27 billion of debt. That's why, because they're there to provide a service. They're not there. If we're funneling, when you think about it, right, we're funneling the exact same under-resourced communities through the prison system. This whole idea that the police are there to protect and serve, or that mass incarceration is there for our benefit. We spend over $277 billion on prisons and policing every year, and another $80 billion just on prison. And yet we say every year, this is not any safer. We're not safer. The place is more dangerous. But it's the same communities. How come the most safe communities are not the most police communities? Why are they the most under-resourced communities repeatedly? And it's for what Alec was talking about. It's not just the fact that prison takes you away and it destabilizes you, but it also warehouses you amongst the worst social ills. We all know suicide is the leading cause of death in prisons. Thousands of people commit suicide, and it's over 76% of the people that commit suicide in prisons and local jails, they are held for less than a week. So this is like heinous, obvious, terrible system. And we know this and we recognize it, but yet we continue to put all the money there and not into people because it's not there about rehabilitating them. We know that because if you warehouse them, they go back into their communities with all of the same terrible things that they've learned, all the violence, all of the things you claim to be condemning. All it does is guarantee if I have fines, fees, and everything associated, I'm already the most impoverished community, and now I'm in further debt. What happens? That's right. So that's why.
It's like Chris Rock says, the money's not in the cure, the money's in the treat.
Exactly.
The U.S. incarceration rate is literally the second largest in the world, literally second to China. How fitting is that? We never really had this many prisons as we have today. I think in like the 70s or so, maybe the 60s and the 70s, there was probably like maybe 400 or 500 prisons. Now there's thousands, privately and federally owned prisons across the country. They make billions of dollars. Billions. Since the 1970s, our prison population has increased 500%. The U.S. prison workers produce $11 billion worth of products. They only get paid like maybe 15 to 52 cents per hour. And I mean, granted, prisoners have always did some type of work when it comes to building in this country. I mean, we saw it in movies where, prisoners were out there with the suits, with the stripes on it, and they was out there hammering away, building railroads and whatnot. So you have to look at the fact that now, because we are so into consumerism, it would only make sense that they would create some way for them to make more money off of us. Sorry, y'all, my camera kind of messed up because of my crazy cat. But I mean, truth be told, like no other group of people have been able to sell such a negative image of Black people like hip hop has. Not even R&B, not even jazz. There was just a time when rap had there was such a good balance. You had your gangster rap, and you had people like Lil' Kim and your Foxy Browns and everything, but then you also had your conscious hip hop. You had your backpack movement, which would be, your Kanye West, your Commons, Talib Kweli. There was just a balance that hip hop had at one point that we no longer have. You have to literally search in order to find conscious hip hop. I would say like even like nowadays, finding a balance in the music genre right now is somewhat difficult, but it's possible. Look at the rates, the statistics. Look at how women have cheered on people like Sexy Red. You know what I mean? Like, Sexy Red is by far the dustiest of all the female rappers right now. Like, granted, we have Sukiyana, who's also overtly sexual, but Sexy Red is on a whole nother level of just a toxic image for black women. You have Drake over here, who has been in the industry for a good 20 years, who has not even evolved as an artist, who can't even handle criticism. And that is the conversation that's being had right now. Like, the conversations that are currently being had on social media is about Sexy Red and Drake's album. Never mind all of the other stuff that we got going on in our current environment. None of that is really a factor when it comes to these young people. All they're talking about is these artists. We all have choices that we make in our lives. I'm not saying that you can't indulge in certain type of music and still be a successful person. I'm just saying that there seems to be a bit of a shift in the consciousness that is going on with the people who are listening to hip hop music. Even if you look at the way that the education is going when it comes to our young people.
No, y'all, can we talk about it? Can we please talk about it? Let's take a moment to discuss. Let's take a moment to debrief. Let's take a moment to unpack. So I'm not really understanding why they're not telling y'all. Like, we all know that the world is behind, like, you know, globally, like, you know, because of the pandemic and stuff. But I don't understand why they're not stressing to y'all how bad it is. Like, I'm not even trying to be funny, but these kids are... I'm going to just say this. I teach 7th grade. They are still performing on the 4th grade level. I don't care how you flip it, turn it, swing it, swindle it. They still performing on the 4th grade level. Ain't nobody talking about how they just keep moving, passing them on. They just keep passing them on, 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 passing them on. I can put as many zeros in this grade book as I want to. They gonna move that child to the 8th grade next year. Ain't nobody talking about that. Why they not talking about that? Why they not telling y'all that y'all... And why don't y'all know that y'all kids not performing on their grade level? Why y'all don't know this?
They're not listening to rhythm and blues. They barely listening to pop music. Pop music ain't really even popping like that anymore. We have no way of understanding the way that everyone is being affected by the music that's being put out right now. We could honestly turn on our TVs and see. We can honestly pull up our videos on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and see that it's affecting people, and it's affecting the way that women are portraying themselves. It's affecting the way that dating is. It's affecting the way that we carry ourselves out here when it comes to men and women. We're starting to see more men have no problem with beating on women. At this point, what can we do to stop this? What can we do to stop it? Stop listening to it. Because I feel like we being the consumers, the only thing that we could do is turn a blind eye to even allowing this music to be something that we listen to. You know where we could find good music at. We know that the independent era of hip hop is kind of where most of the good artists are, but they're not the ones that's being pushed through the airwaves. This is a time where people who do listen to this music need to either take a real long look at how it is affecting their lives right now, how it's affecting their decision making, how it's affecting their schoolwork. Is it allowing you to grow more as an individual, or are you dissolving with the artists? A lot of the artists that are out right now don't even have longevity. We can't even see us listening to these artists within the next 5 to 10 years. Cardi B, as good as an artist as she is, I think that the listeners have become so conditioned to just dealing with fast food rappers that they're not even holding her accountable for not even putting out an album in 5 years. We watching Nicki Minaj, who's one of the most successful female rappers in the history of hip hop, completely lose her mind based upon her decisions that she's making. So everything comes with a choice. Yes, you could choose not to do dumb shit so you get locked up and become a part of the prison industrial complex, but you can also decide, hey, we don't want this shit no more. We don't want to listen to it no more. Turn off the radio. It's just time to make some changes. And it's just time for us as the consumers who are spending our money and putting our effort into making sure that these companies are putting out good music. It's time for us to put our best foot forward, because there was a time in this country where if we heard some music that we didn't like, They put them CDs out in front of them record stores and they wrote them bitches over. We heard some music that we ain't like. People called these radio stations and they had music removed. It was a time, I remember, I actually read about it. I wasn't born around this time, where John Lennon from the Beatles said something about the Beatles being bigger than Jesus. Do you know that those people called up to that radio station? They had the Beatles music removed until he apologized. This generation cancels anybody who speaks out about something that they don't want to hear. We continuously allow certain people to put out certain music that is corrupting the minds of the listeners. We're allowing steaks to be served to us on the top of a garbage can. It's like you're getting a steak dinner, looks good, smells good, but it's served to you on a dirty trash can lid. Are you going to continuously eat it? Are you going to say, nah, bring me something else? That's damn near the mindset that we got to have when it comes to music these days. We're living in some historic times. These times need to be documented by these artists. Same way that people in the 70s were documenting the civil rights era and everything that was going on around that time. We need to get these artists on the same wave. So I think it's time, like Pac said, for us to start holding these artists accountable for the type of music that they're putting out there. For us to start letting it be known, like, listen, we're not going to accept it anymore. If you have children and you are a parent, you need to let it be known that you don't want your children to listen to this music anymore. As long as we allow it, they're going to continue to feed it to us. Listen, don't shoot the messenger. Only receive the message. If it's for you, receive it. If not, leave it. I'm about to go ahead and get up out of here. You guys be blessed, be well. Peace.